Hello, welcome to another session on human resource management from Naipunya Business School, Pongam, Koratti, Thrissur. Today I will be discussing on human resource management of CALICUT University, Module 5, Part 5. In Module 5, which is Compensation Management and Grievance Redressal, I will be talking about the Part 5, Discipline in Organizations, Approaches to Discipline, Punishment, Essentials of a Good Discipline System. Discipline is the backbone of any healthy industrial relations. More so, I would say that discipline in individual settings, in company settings, in organization settings, in institution settings leads actually a healthy relationship between the management as well as the people who work there. Hence, the promotion and maintenance of employee discipline is essential for the smooth functioning for any type of organization. Moreover, we will also find that employee morale and industrial peace are definitely linked to the proper maintenance of discipline. Discipline is the orderly conduct by an employee in an expected manner. It is a force or fear of a force that deters or prevents an individual from doing things which are detrimental to the objectives of that organization, of that group. Discipline has become one of the most important activities in an organization. You would find that when Henry Fayol described his management theory, he mentioned discipline to be one of the important factors in the 14 points. So today in this class, we will be discussing about employee discipline. So what is then discipline? Discipline implies the absence of chaos, irregularity, and confusion in the behavior of a worker. Or in other words, the organization just flows and flows without any chaos or confusion, without any irregularity, without any behavioral issues from any worker, and it is so smooth. Now, Calhoun, in sociological context, has described discipline. He says that discipline is a force that prompts individuals or groups to observe rules, regulations, and procedures which are deemed to be necessary for the effective functioning of an organization. Now, when Calhoun described it in the sociological context, he was also referring to the employee context, where employees are groups of individuals working in an organization to produce results. Now, discipline is the regulation and modulation of human activities to produce a controlled performance. Now, discipline is the regulation means how you regulate, and modulation means how you continue to go take it forward of human activities to produce a controlled performance in the organization. Now, we will look at other definitions of organization discipline. Discipline refers to the state of employees' self-control and effectiveness in his work. That means how the employee would behave in an organization. It indicates the development of genuine teamwork because teamwork happens only when there is discipline. Discipline implies a state of order in an organization. There is a genuine order in an organization. It means proper appreciation of the hierarchical superior subordinate relationship, willing cooperation for and the observation of the rules of the organization constitutes the essence of discipline. Discipline is management's complaints against an employee, whereas grievance is an employee's complaint against the management. I hope when you connect it with grievance, you can very well understand that discipline is the management's complaint against an employee, whereas grievance is an employee's complaint against a management. So we have to look at discipline from a grievance side also. As we proceed, I will be talking about grievances also related to discipline. How grievances can contribute to in discipline. Okay. Now, discipline and punishment. Now, the real purpose of discipline is to encourage employees to conform established standards of job performance and to behave sensibly and safely at work. Now, when you have discipline, it encourages all employees to work according to the established standards, the company's quality standards or quantity standards of job performance, and they have to behave sensibly as well as safely at work. Whereas punishment is the process of either administering an unpleasant stimulus, such as a warning letter, suspension, withholding a pay or reward, or employees' job deficiencies, which may lead to demotion. Now, this is actually one form of discipline. Punishment is only one form of discipline. But there is other side of discipline also. If you look at discipline, you would find that there is something called as positive reinforcement. Or in other words, if the employee does something good, he has to be commended, he has to be awarded, he has to be praised, and that is what is expected usually. However, there are situations where you cannot live with that because man is different. Human beings are different. One person is different from the other. As a result, there is requirement for punishment also. Even though positive reinforcement is an ideal situation, we always find that punishment has also become a very important step as far as discipline is concerned. Now, let us look at the objectives of discipline. The purpose or the objective of discipline, according to Dessler, is to encourage employees to behave sensibly at work. Now, what is sensible? That means adhering to the rules and regulations. However, the purpose and objectives of employee discipline are: 1. To enforce rules and regulations, to punish the offender, to serve as an example to others to strictly follow rules, to ensure the smooth running of the organization, to increase work efficiency, to maintain industrial peace, because too much of indiscipline in one company can lead to strikes and other type of indiscipline which may disturb industrial peace, to improve working relations and tolerance with one another, and to develop a working culture which focuses only on performance. So Dessler has very elaborately given the objectives of discipline. The basic purpose of discipline is, however, to follow rules and regulations within an organization so that the organization can achieve its objective of productivity and performance. Now, what is the nature of discipline? Now, discipline is required for maximum productivity. However, we believe that discipline should work from within. An employee should have discipline within himself. So, McGinson described discipline in the following ways. He said that self-discipline implies that a person brings the discipline in himself, or in other words, the person is self-disciplined. Second, he said it is orderly behavior, whereas he said that in order to create an orderly behavior, there should be a condition, and discipline is a condition, or maybe even a type of reinforcement or punishment has to be given for orderly behavior. And he is also says again another thing. Now, in orderly case behavior, it may be warning or sometimes discipline or maybe a reinforcement, whereas punishment is used to prevent indiscipline and prevent its recurrences in the organization or in the industry. So, McGinson makes it very clear. One, if people have self-discipline, then there is no problem. If they have got orderly behavior, which can be brought through reinforcement or warnings, good. And if punishment is required, it can prevent actually indiscipline. Now, let us look at the types of discipline. There are essentially two types of discipline. One discipline is called as positive discipline and the other is called as negative discipline. Now, what is positive discipline? Positive discipline involves creation of an atmosphere in an organization where employees are able to conform to the established rules and regulations. Here, actually, there is no pressure from anybody, but employees themselves willingly adhere to the rules and regulations of the organization. However, this is not easy to be done. This can be done if you can give employees an opportunity to display their leadership. They take up leadership on their own, or they will become self-disciplined. As a result, the advantages you will find that is there is no need for strict supervision to maintain standards and observe rules and regulations. Everyone is answerable to oneself. But on the other side, we have something called as negative discipline. Now, in negative discipline, penalties are used. For example, warning letters can be there. Sometimes, punishments can be there. Adherence to rules and regulations are strictly followed. The discipline and all committee meetings are there. Discipline issues will be brought before committees. All these things will lead to actually a type of negative discipline where people are given penalty for violating discipline. Now, this particular type of approach is called as negative or a type of negative discipline or a punitive or punishment approach. Now, so ideally, it is better to have a situation where you have a positive discipline because then nobody need to fret about the rules and regulations of the place. They practice it on their own. However, it is not easy to have positive discipline always because human beings are different and they come from different backgrounds. As a result, you would always require actually certain penalties to be there to see that discipline is ensured. Now, let us look at what are the symptoms of general indiscipline. Some of the symptoms of general indiscipline are absence from work, absenteeism, abusing customers, abusive language towards supervisors, assault and fighting among employees, causing unsafe working conditions, damage to or loss of machinery or materials, dishonesty, disloyalty to the employer, falsifying records, falsifying employment application, gambling, incompetence, insubordination. I hope I should tell you something about disloyalty to employer, which says that includes competing with employer or conflict of interest. That means, giving secrets of this organizations to another company, or maybe, having certain a conflict of interest as far as the company is concerned through other methods also by giving secrets, or maybe sometimes trying to harass through other parties, or maybe intimidating, or sometimes it may be putting certain fault in the machines also, or destroying the machines, can all be disloyalty to the employer. Then other symptoms of general indiscipline can be leaving place of work early, early leave, loafing, being idle in the work, misconduct during a strike, maybe destroying certain equipments during a strike, negligence, obscene or immoral conduct, maybe doing certain things which are immoral in nature towards other employees, participation in a prohibited strike, possession or use of drugs or intoxicants, profane or abusive language usage, refusal to accept a job assignment, refusal to work overtime, sleeping during job time, slow down, tardiness, theft, threat to or assault of management representative. There are different types of general indiscipline which are seen in organizations. The list is endless. However, some of them I have been highlighting here through these two slides. Now let us look at the causes of indiscipline. Sometimes you find that employees are not the reason for indiscipline. It comes even from the management side also. Management would have to settle certain grievances, and the grievances, if not settled, can come up in the form of indiscipline also. Now, let us look at some of these issues which are from the management side. The common causes of indiscipline from the management side can be unfair management practices. For example, wage discrimination, giving wages, to different employees through different wages. So that can be called as wage discrimination. Non-compliance with promotional policies and transfer policy. Management does not give promotion or transfer to every employee or maybe to any employee, and that is against the non-compliance. And discrimination allotment of work. Sometimes more work will be given to some employees and less for another group. Defective handling of grievances. Grievances are not settled on time. Payment of low wages. As a result, there is always a grievance, and it can come in the form of indiscipline. Delay in payment of wages, creating low quality of work life, etc., can be some of the causes for management practices. Otherwise, we have something called as absence of effective leadership. When effective leadership is not there, control is not there. As a result, also indiscipline can be caused. Communication barriers. Sometimes the organization does not communicate properly, or does not have a proper communication system. This can also lead to indiscipline. Varying disciplinary measures. The supervisor decides as to whom should be punished and who should not be. That also can be an issue. Defective supervision, especially the behavior and attitude of supervisors, also can cause grievances, and it can lead to indiscipline also. Inadequate attention of personal problems. Victimization or exploitation of workers. Absence of code of conduct. There is no code of conduct, and whatever the supervisor says is considered to be the code of conduct, which can also become an indiscipline. Divide and rule policy of the company. Many managers do this. They get secret information from other employees, and they try to divide and rule between the employees, which can cause indiscipline. Deferring settlement of employee grievances. Whatever employee grievances are there that are actually put off, and there is no action on that. Misjudgment in promotion and placements. Not the right person does not get actually promoted or placed. As a result, also it can lead to indiscipline. And finally, I would say that unsettled grievances are major causes of indiscipline. Now, what are the approaches to discipline? Now, how do we approach discipline? One, to maintain a harmonious relationship and promote industrial peace, a code of discipline has to be laid down, and this is there. It should apply to both public as well as private sector or in government, and everywhere this code of discipline has to be there. The code is based on the certain principles. There should be no strike or lockout without prior notice. This is something which is very, very important. No strike can be declared without prior notice. No unilateral action should be taken in connection with any industrial matter. The management or the trade union does not have the right to take a unilateral action against any industrial matter. It should be always discussed, and then only a decision should be taken. Employees should not go to slow tactic. Now there is something called as pen down strike, or maybe work on to rule. They are all situations where the employee is causing indiscipline, and this indiscipline can affect actually productivity or performance. So this should not be allowed. So code of discipline says that employees should not follow go slow tactics. No deliberate damage should be caused to plant or property if there is a strike or otherwise. Acts of violation, intimidation, and coercion should not be resorted by management. The existing machinery for settlement of disputes should be utilized. There should be an existing machinery. If not, there has to be created one, and through that only disputes or grievances should be settled, not one-to-one or privately. Actions that disturb cordial relationship should be avoided. Wherever there is a cordial relationship, there should not be any interest to disturb the cordial relationship among managers as well as employees or between supervisors as well as employees. So the code of discipline is important, and this code has to be binding between the management as well as the employees also. Then only we will be able to enforce discipline. So, and approaches to discipline, you will find that the code of discipline is one strategy that you will be able to bring down in discipline cases. Now, let us look at the next method. The next method to approaching discipline is to create basically a disciplinary system. A disciplinary system has to be created in the organization. Earlier, we had a code of conduct, and now we are going to establish a disciplinary system. In the disciplinary system, the first thing to be given is training. For example, supervisors, managers, or people who take care of discipline should be trained on how discipline should be used, and the discipline decisions are taken fair and unbiased. So that is the first training that we need to give to the supervisors and managers. Centralization of discipline. That means discipline decision should be uniform throughout the organization. For all levels of employee, there should be actually a uniform discipline should be uniform across the organization. Impersonal discipline. Discipline should be handled impersonally. Managers should try to minimize the ill feelings arising out of decisions and should limit their emotional involvement in disciplinary sessions. That means emotionally do not go for any disciplinary sessions. Take it cool. Notifications of conduct that may result in discipline. Now, certain times, management or supervisors will come out with certain notifications which can lead to misconduct. Now, if this notification has been discussed with the employee or the trade union, then it may not result in discipline. Ideally, it is always to take a decision and create a notification which is not biased, and it is documented, and it is accessible, as well as it is fair for everyone. Information regarding penalties. The employer should define what are the penalties and or warnings, and what would be the fine or the penalty to be paid as far as the disciplinary problems are concerned. For example, fine. Suppose I think fine is one of the methods. If you violate one time, only a warning. Second time, there is a small penalty. Third time can be a penalty. And then can be you can go for written, documented, and all those things. So there should be actually a very clear information on how penalties would be enforced. Discipline should be progressive in nature. That means discipline is not just to create a negative feeling in a person, but to correct. So when you give a progressive type of discipline, the person will be able to modify the behavior. So it should not be growth. It should not be a stop, or it should not be it should not be a situation where there is a stumbling block. It should always be progressive in nature to correct the individual, not to punish him. Documentation. All the disciplinary sessions or meetings that you involve should always be documented, and notification should be given to the employee as well as to the management. Discipline should be flexible and consistent. That means there is no hard and fast rule, even though it should be uniform. At the same time, it should not be flexible for some employees and for others it is not. So everyone, it should be flexible. It should be consistent for everyone. Whatever is possible to be done can be corrected from both sides to see that discipline is ensured inside the organization. Disciplinary action should be prompt, or otherwise it should be immediate, otherwise it will lose its value. Now, what are the disciplinary procedures? Now, disciplinary procedures are the methods by which a management will be able to enforce discipline as far as organizations are concerned. If an employee has committed an offense, there are certain steps to be followed. The first step is to issue a charge sheet. Now, this charge sheet is issued after a prima facie investigation. That means the supervisor or the manager gives a report, and based on the report, somebody has to do an investigation to find out that there is actually a reason for conducting an inquiry, and then you issue a charge sheet. So the first thing that you would do as far as disciplinary procedure is to issue a charge sheet. Now the second one is consideration of explanation. Once the charge sheet is given, the employee would give a written explanation on why his or her conduct was bad. Once that explanation reaches, the management has got every right to accept it or to reject it. Now, if it rejects, it has to go to the next step, or otherwise it would stop then and there. The explanation serves the purpose. The third one is suspension pending inquiry. Now, if the if the explanation given is not satisfied, then the management can take over the case, and they can proceed with that. This is going for a suspension. However, management has to be understand that it should be dealt with Industrial Employment Standing Order Act of 1946, where the suspended employee has to be given and subsistence allowance equal to one half of his wages for the first 90 days of suspension and three-fourths of the wages for the remaining period of suspension. So before we suspend, we have to see, the management has to see that whether there is a genuinity of the case, and if there is a genuinity, they can proceed with the suspension. However, you have to follow the legal obligation or legal compliance regarding the Industrial Employment Standing Order Act of 1946 has to be practiced, where the first 90 days, one half of the wage should be paid, and beyond 90 days, it should be three-fourths of the wages should be paid for the period of suspension. Now, after this, the management can appoint an inquiry officer, and who would inquire this case, and this would be dealt with both the employee as well as the management can bring their own people at this time of inquiry to support their roles. However, the principle of natural justice should be followed. That means the employee has got every right to defend his case. He should be heard, and also he should be also told that if he or she is not satisfied with the outcome, they can go for an appeal. Similarly, there are also instances where the employee would be asked, we can bring with him a bystander or maybe a support from the union or from the legal side also. But however, they will not be participating in the inquiry process. They will be just listeners, but they can ask for clarification. Then finally, once inquiry is conducted, and if there is a charge against that employee, then the order of punishment can be given. Disciplinary action is being given if the employee feels, if the management feels that there is a case, and disciplinary procedure can be taken in the form of a punishment also. The punishment can be anything, right from transfer or to demotion or to even dismissal of the employee also. However, if the employee feels that he or she has not been given justice, they can go for higher appeal, especially in the civil courts, or even in the court of law, in the labor courts, civil courts, or any court of law as far as the country is concerned. Now we have something called as progressive disciplinary. I was mentioning about progressive disciplinary. What is progressive disciplinary process? The first step in progressive disciplinary process is written verbal warning. Or in other words, the employee is given a verbal warning which says that the purpose, date, and outcome, all these things. Now, before giving actually a written verbal warning, in the first offense, you can give an oral warning. Second offense also can be oral. Third offense also can be oral, and fourth offense can be oral. But from there onwards, you start basically the verbal warning also. Now, fourth offense is too much, and during that time, the verbal warning has been given in the fourth stage. And then the next one is written reprimand. Now, written reprimand, if it comes, it becomes actually a part of the employee's file, as personal file. As a result, that will always be there, and the employee will find it actually difficult to take it because it is a part of the record. And with this record, the management will be able to uh, take out his uh, grade pay, or maybe his allowances, or sometimes even his salary increments also can be stalled if once this written reprimand is in place. The third step is usually suspension, and if all these steps continue, then it goes to suspension. And suspension means temporarily keeping the person outside the organization. As I have already told you, if it is 90 days, you have to pay half the subsistence allowance should be half of the salary, and more than 90 days, it should be three-fourths of the salary. As to three-fourths of the salary should be given a subsistence allowance. Now, the next one is dismissal. Now, there is no other option available to take back the employee, then we call it as dismissal, which is the ultimate one, because it is usually challenged in the court of law. As a result, dismissal should be used only in the most serious offenses. Now, there are certain techniques which are used especially for discipline. One of them is called as the hot stove rule by Douglas McGregor, who is a person who has given us the motivational theory also. Now, McGregor has mentioned about the hot stove rule, taking the illustration of how a hot stove can, touching a hot stove can create, uh, makes actually changes in an individual. The same he has used in employee disciplinary methods also. Says that in the first rule, says when you touch the hot stove, you burn your hand. Or in other words, immediate investigation should be there. Promptness is necessary, otherwise delayed. Delayed if you are delaying actually the process, possibly the importance of the case or the importance of the punishment or the procedure will be lost. Second, your had warning as you knew that the stove was red hot, and you knew what would happen to you if you touched it. So here it says that hot stove. We all know that if you touch a hot stove, you will get burnt. In labor relations also, the first thing is it is important that employees be briefed about what are the outcomes if they do certain things which are outside the context, if they do something pertaining to indiscipline. So they should be told during the induction period itself, they should be briefed as to what is the type of penalty if they do, if they will get for doing indiscipline inside the organization. The discipline was consistent. Every time you touch the hot stuff, you get burned. So consistency is very, very important. Everyone or should have actually this consistency. Consistently, whenever indiscipline is being done, immediately there should be a punishment. So that consequence definitely will create actually people not to do actually indiscipline. So discipline should be consistent, and the discipline should be impersonal. The fourth one says discipline is impersonal, means anybody who touches the stove will get burned. So disciplinary should be impersonal. Whoever it may be, whatever it may be, as far as the organization is concerned, whenever the discipline is being enforced, everyone should get the same type of punishment. So the hot stove rule has been very clearly explained how discipline should be there, and it forms as one of the models of discipline in any organization. Having discipline or the code of discipline, or maybe the methods of discipline in any organization. Now, what are the factors that you need to consider when disciplining? Now, we have taken a step of disciplining. There are certain other things also that you need to consider. One, seriousness of the problem. Now look at what is the impact that the discipline issue can bring to the organization. What is the seriousness? I mean, what is the type of importance? For example, if there is a case of fraud, or I would say financial fraud, that is actually considered to be very serious, and that should be dealt with the highest level of seriousness. But maybe if it is a small case of violation of a time, or maybe not coming to office on time, it is not that serious. So look at the seriousness of the issue and look at the position also. Who commits and what is the type of offense that has been created, and seriousness uh, as far as the outcome is concerned. Second one is duration of the problem. How long does actually this indiscipline persist? So disciplining again, you have to look at actually duration. What is the impact as far as the duration of concern? Frequency and nature of the problem. How long has it been happening in the organization? Is it continuous? Is it been regular? That is another point. Is there any other reason for this indiscipline? That comes into your fourth factor called as extenuating factors. Maybe sometimes a grievance could be leading to discipline cases, indiscipline cases. In that case, first of all, solve the grievance and then actually take the disciplinary action. And finally, to the last thing that you need to consider is management backing. Does your disciplining have a management backing? If not, difficult. Why? Because the employee may go for legal and you should not be able. So management backing is another thing that you need to require as far as disciplining is. For your thought, I would also have brought you something on grievances. I was supposed to talk about grievances in the last module. However, grievances are also related to indiscipline. And I would like to talk about how grievances can be settled so that indiscipline can be prevented. Now, let us look at what are the methods by which you can reduce grievances. One, grievances should be reduced, can be observed. Grievances can be observed directly, especially in meetings, group meetings, one-to-one meetings, grievances can be identified. If there is a grievance identified, immediately take action to see that that grievance is prevented. Why? Because it can turn into a discipline issue later. Second thing is, whenever grievances are to prevent grievances, keep gripe boxes. Now, gripe boxes are basically suggestion boxes, and the employee can anonymously post actually complaints. So that is another method by which you can actually reduce grievances. As a result, indiscipline can be prevented. Open door policy, I think I've already explained to you, where the employee can actually share his grievance to the topmost employee, to the topmost manager of the institution, is another method of actually preventing grievances. And finally, exit interview. Suppose the grievance was not heard and the employee decides to leave the organization. An exit interview can be conducted, and this exit interview can provide actually significant leads as far as grievances are concerned. So these are sometimes uh, these grievances are an issue. These issues, grievance issues, can cause actually indiscipline. I hope all of you had a wonderful session on discipline and punishment. When you practice as managers in the industry, may you all be reminded about preventing actually discipline issues in the company. Or if it happens, make use of these procedures also to see that discipline prevails in your organization. Because a disciplined company is a company which performs and the productivity would be very good. So thank you very much for being with me on the session. Looking forward to meet you all in the next session on Module 5, Part 6. Thank you very much.